Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi, Bekhorot, Daf 13, Omad B. Ma Maisecha Ba'achas Af Goy Nami Ba'achas. Just as property is acquired from your counterpart only through one act of acquisition, i.e. pulling, so too property is acquired from a Gentile only through only one act of acquisition, i.e. payment of money. The sages said, and according to the opinion of Amema, who's Amema? Amema was one of the great sages of the 5th and 6th centuries of Babylonian Amoraim. He was born and raised in the Chaldea, where he studied and taught Torah. It is likely that he also studied with the sage of Pumbedita. The same is those are mainly from the 5th generation Amoraim, students of Rabbi and Rabbah. Apparently Amema served as rabbi and judge in the Chaldea, where he established various ordinances. But he also wielded influence in many other places, including Mahosa. These are the following generation, including Marashi, were his disciples. He had a son named Ma, who studied from Marashi during Amema's lifetime, who says that pulling affects acquisition in the case of a Gentile. This works so well if he holds an according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who says by Torah law money affects acquisition. What does that mean? Davar Torah Ma'os Konos. By Torah law money affects acquisition. Unlike Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan does not provide a source for his opinion. Commentary suggests various reasons for it. Some say that this source is the influence of a Jewish person can be acquired as a slave to pay with money alone. The same should certainly apply to the acquisition of his property. Rabbeinu Hananiah on the Rif and the Bab Metzia 47b. Others know that this is a 40-year influence that this a 40-year influence was rejected by the Gemara, the Ramban. Rashi contends that the source is the verse, and if he that sanctified the field will indeed redeem it, then he shall add a fifth part of the money to your valuation to it, and it should be assured to him. Leviticus 27:19. He explains that since consecrated property can be redeemed with money alone, it follows by an 40-year influence that regular property can be acquired in the same manner. See Rashi and Eruvin 81b. Notified and others add a further verse as Rabbi Yochanan's source, or buy of your counterpart's hand, Leviticus 25:14, as buying generally refers to payment of money in exchange for goods. By Torah, all movable property is acquired through payment of money, and therefore once payment has been transferred, neither party can renege on the deal. The sages decree that movable property can be acquired through lifting, or when necessary pulling. This ruling is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, Bab Metzia 47b, Rambam Sefer Kinyan Bekhorot 3:1, Shulchan Aruch Mikvah 198:1. Pulling does not. If a man makes Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, then it can be derived from the phrase of your counterpart that transactions with your counterpart, i.e. a Jew, are affected through payment of money, whereas transactions with a Gentile are affected by pulling. But if a man are holding according to the opinion of Reish Lakish, who says the act of acquisition of pulling is explicit in the Torah, then the halacha is that transactions with your counterpart are affected by pulling, transactions with a Gentile are also affected by pulling. According why do I need the phrase of your counterpart? The Sage said in explanation, the phrase of your counterpart does not teach halacha with regard to the method of acquisition, but is referring to the latter part of the verse. And if you make a sale to your counterpart, or buy of your counterpart's hand, the man shall not exploit his brother. In Leviticus 25:14, the verse is derived as follows: you must return the sum of exploitation. What does that mean? Exploitation. In monetary matters, it refers to the prohibition against deceiving or taking unfair advantage of another in a business transaction. Leviticus 27:14. If either the buyer or the seller exploits you, then the wrong party has the right to be reimbursed according to the value of the article. By rabbinic law, the specific halacha depends on the sum of exploitation relative to the article's value. If the exploitation is greater than 1/6 of the article's value, the sale is nullified. If it is less than that amount, no money must be returned. It is assumed that such a minor discrepancy is forgiven. It is precisely 1/6. If it is precisely 1/6, so the fact that the difference between the price paid and the market value must be returned. A claim of exploitation can be submitted for only a limited period after a transaction, which is equal to the time it takes the buyer to have the object appraised by an expert. And that's from the Rambam Sefer Kinyan Hilchot Mechira 12:5. The Gemara rejects this suggestion. This exemption from returning the sum of exploitation to a Gentile is derived from the last part of the verse alone. A man shall not exploit his brother. A Gentile is not included in the category of his brother. Accordingly, the phrase of your counterpart remains extraneous. The Gemara responds: one phrase is required to exclude a Gentile, and one serves to exclude consecrated property. Chad b'goy, chad b'hekdesh. The prohibition of exploitation does not apply to consecrated property. Accordingly, if in a transaction involving the temporary treasury, an item worth a single dinar was sold for 1,000 dinars, or vice versa, the sum of the exploitation is not returned. The Ramah cites an opinion that this is the halacha only when the sum of exploitation is less than the value of the item. The Torah cites in the Bosch. It was twice as market price or more. The sum of exploitation must be returned. That's the Rambam says for kidney here 13.8, 27.29, and the common reminder smart there. The Gemara rejects the suggestion. The exemption from returning the sum of exploitation to a Gentile is derived from the last part of the verse alone. A man shall not exploit his brother. A Gentile is not included in the category of his brother. According to the phrase of your counterpart remains extraneous. The Gemara responds, one phrase is required to exclude a Gentile, and one serves to exclude consecrated property. and both are derivations are necessary. As had the Muslim written only one exclusionary phrase, I would say this is with regard to transactions with a Gentile that one is not subject to the prohibition of exploitation. With regard to transactions involving consecrated property, one is subject to the prohibition of exploitation. Therefore, the other derivation teaches us that one is not subject to the prohibition of exploitation with regard to transactions involving consecrated property either. The Gemara remarks, this will work out well according to the one who says that his robbery, i.e. robbing a Gentile, there's a dispute among the Tanaim as to whether or not robbing a Gentile is prohibited by Torah law. It is noted in Jewish Talmud Bava Kama 4.3 that even Rabbi Gamliel, who holds that by Torah law it is not prohibited, decree that it is prohibited due to the desecration of God's name, as robbery is an egregious sin. See the Sefer Bava Kama 10.14. Many sages maintain that it is in fact prohibited by Torah law to rob a Gentile. Encyclopedia Talmudit still maintain that because there is a prohibition by Torah against harming others and causing suffering, no specific source is required for the prohibition against robbing Gentiles and Marshal. Even the verses cited as sources for this prohibition are meant only as supporting allusions, and that's in the Yam Shlomo and Bava Kama. It's prohibited. What does that mean? Gezeno Asur. It's prohibited to steal or withhold property from another in any amount. This halacha with regard to both a Jew and a Gentile. That's the Rambam Sefer Nezik in Hilchot Gezeno Raveda 1:2, Shulchan Aruch 15 and 59:1. As this is the reason that the verse is necessary to permit keeping the sum of exploitation obtained from a Gentile. But if the Mema holds, in accordance with the opinion of the one who says that robbery is permitted, is it necessary to state that one may keep the sum of exploitation obtained from a Gentile? The Gemara accepts this reasoning. The sages said, if a Mema holds in accordance with the opinion of the one who says that his robbery is permitted, before he holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan that money affects acquisition by Torah law, and therefore the difficulties do not arise. The Gemara raises an objection to the opinion that property is acquired from a Gentile by monetary payment. It is told in the Bible with regard to one who buys broken vessels. Karitayot, that's a footnote. The halacha is in accordance with the ruling of the Bible, according to Raph's opinion, interpretation. Consequently, if one purchases pieces of gold or silver from a Gentile and finds an object of idol worship among them, he may return pieces to the seller if he has not yet pulled them. Similarly, if he pulled the gold or silver but has not yet paid for it, he may return the pieces despite the fact that pulling generally affects acquisition, as is considered a mistaken transaction. Once a piece has been pulled and paid for, the buyer must dispose of the prohibited object. That's the Rambam Sefer Mother Hilchot Avodah 7.5. See that Mishnah there, Shulchan Aruch Yodeh 463, made of gold or silver from the Gentiles. The halacha is in accordance with the ruling of the Bible, according to Raph's interpretation. Consequently, if one purchases pieces of gold or silver from a Gentile and finds an object of idol worship among them, he may return the pieces to the seller if he has not yet pulled them. Similarly, if he pulled the gold or silver but has not yet paid for it, he may return the pieces despite the fact that pulling generally affects acquisition, as this is considered a mistaken transaction. Once a piece has been pulled and paid for, the buyer must dispose of the prohibited object. The Rambam Sefer Mother Hilchot Avodah 7.5. See that Mishnah there, Shulchan Aruch Yodeh 463, and finds among them an object of idol worship. If he pulled the object of idol worship and performed an act of acquisition before he gave the money to the Gentile, he may return the object of idol worship to the Gentile. If he pulled it after giving the money to the Gentile, he may not return it. Since the idol status was not revoked, he must take it and cast into the Dead Sea. The Gemara explains the difficulty, and if you say that payment of money acquires items of Gentiles, why do you need pulling in order to affect the Jews' acquisition of the idol? The Gemara answers, here we are dealing with a case where a Gentile accepted upon himself the habit of affection, in this case by Jewish law. The Gemara raises an objection. If so, why do I need the payment of money in order to affect the Jews' acquisition of the idol? Pulling alone should be enough, and it comes with halach. The Gemara explains that this was a bite of even though the Jew gave money to the Gentile, halach still depends on the other pulling. If he pulled the Bekhorot, yes, he's acquired them. And if not, he has not acquired them. The Gemara asks, if so, then the first point of advice is difficult as it states. If he pulled the object of idol worship before he gave money to Gentile, he may consider idol worship for Gentile. Evidently, pulling alone does not affect the acquisition. By sending the explanation, halacha. The first person who acts because it's the same transaction and should not wish to purchase the idol. Or said that by you maintain the halacha and the first clause is ruled is that because there was a mistaken transaction. Did that say that in the halacha clause there was no mistaken transaction? After all, the Jews do not wish to purchase the idol in the case. When the Rabbi said the purchase in the first clause and the purchase in the last clause are both a mistake transaction, but in the case presented in the first clause where the Jew did not pay the dinas, it does not appear as though there is an object by the person of the Jew, so he may return. By contrast, in the latter clause where the Jew did pay him the dinas, it appears that although there is an object of idol worship in the possession of a Jew, and therefore must cast with the object rather than return, now by could have said to you the first clause was a mistake transaction, he did not know that the idol was included, and he did not give him the dinas, and therefore had not yet inspected the property being purchased. Conversely, the latter clause is not a case of mistaken transaction. But since he already gave the dinas to himself when it came to pull it, he should have inspected the property and then pulled it. If he did not bother to inspect the property even for paying, the transaction is valid. Gemara cites two more interpretations of the Braita. Rashi says, the Braita is in fact discussing a case where the transaction was subject to Gentile law, according to which only monetary payment affects acquisition. And as for the aforementioned difficulty raised to the opinion of Rabbi Shaya from the latter clause, if so, why do I need the pulling in order to affect the Jews' acquisition of the idol? Pulling in the fact not required, rather from the fact that in the first clause pulling does not affect acquisition, that's clause 2 pulling does not affect acquisition. But since the first clause taught the word pulled, in order to teach that this method is ineffective, was also taught the word pulled, despite the fact that its mention is unnecessary. Ravina said, the Braita is discussing a case where it was agreed that the transaction be subject to Jewish law. But in the latter clause, pulling affects acquisition, in the first clause 2, pulling affects acquisition. And as for the difficulty with regard to the first clause, which says that the Jew may return the item even though he's already pulled it, this is what the Braita is saying. If the Braita did not give the money to the Gentile and also did not pull the item, he returns it to the seller. The Gemara adds, what does the term returns mean in this context? It means the Jew returns reneged on his verbal commitment. In other words, he is not required to complete the purchase despite the fact that he initially agreed to do so. The Gemara elaborates, it was necessary for the Tana to teach this explicitly as he holds, reneging on a verbal commitment that was unaccompanied by an act of acquisition constitutes an act of bad faith between two parties. So what does this mean? Yesh bahem mishum mechusrei amano. If there is a verbal agreement between two parties, each of them to keep the word, even if no formal steps have been taken to secure the transaction. Although one who does renege on the deal does not transgress any prohibition and is not subject to the sage's curse, the sage are displeased with his behavior. And that's in Rambam Sefer Kinyan Hechamachira 7a Shochadon Chachim Mikvah 204:7. It is a halachically accepted convention that once money has been paid to make a purchase, one should not renege on the deal, even if the item has not yet been acquired through a formal act of acquisition. Although this convention is not technically binding, one who reneges is subject to the sage's curse. He who exacted payment from the members of the generation of flood and from the generation of the dispersion of the Tower of Babel will exact payment from whoever does not stand by his statement. The Bava Metzia 44a, there is a dispute among the Amoraim with regard to halacha in a case where payment has not yet transferred, but there was a verbal agreement. According to Rab, in such a case, no obligation exists between the two parties. Rabbi Yochanan contends that even if there has been no payment, one who has entered into verbal agreement with another should not go back on his word, and so to speak with with one who does renege. Of Metzia 48a. Nevertheless, Rabbi Yochanan concedes that if the other party does not rely on one's word in the first place, The violation of the verbal agreement does not constitute an act of bad faith. For example, if a buyer agrees to purchase an item for an extraordinarily excessive price, assume that the seller does not generally depend on his word, the garment is therefore not binding from the outset. See Baba Metzia 49a. In this case, too, as the gentleman does not consider the verbal agreement binding, the Jew may renege on the deal. And he holds that this statement applies only to a case where a Jew purchases an item from another Jew, as they are assumed to uphold their verbal commitments. But in the case of a Jew who purchases an item from Gentiles, as they are not assumed to uphold their verbal commitments, reneging on one's word does not constitute an act of bad faith between the parties, since neither party relies upon the commitment of the other in the first place. Well, that was the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening. I wish you a good week, and peace and Israel. All the best. Bye.